On today's show, are the Toronto Raptors a sneaky playoff team in the Eastern Conference? And what are the next steps in the evolution of Scottie Barnes' game? It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We have something a little bit different for you, though. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5, just $5, and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. So right now, head on over to FanDuel.com. Take a look at all the wagers for this upcoming season. You can take a look at who's going to win MVP, Rookie of the Year, Sixth Man of the Season awards. Take a look at who's going to win the NBA Cup, or head on over and take a look at who's going to win the NBA Finals. Right now, the Boston Celtics still favorites to repeat at plus 300. OKC Thunder not far behind them at plus 700. You got the 76ers and Knicks tied up at plus 900 to win the title this next season. And the Denver Nuggets and Dallas Mavericks both right there at plus 1100. So go check out those odds, find a wager you like, and then get access to NFL Sunday Ticket. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. And joining us now is the host of Locked On Raptors, Sean Woodley, who you can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Raptors. Sean, because I think the Raptors are in a really interesting position this upcoming season. I don't know if there's another team in the league whose ceiling and floor outcomes and scenarios are so vastly different than this Raptors squad, because it feels like if everything clicks for this young team, that they could be in the playoff hunt, in the mix, maybe a sleeper candidate to ruffle some feathers in the Eastern Conference playoff picture. But this is also a team that only just posted 25 wins last season. So I'm trying to figure out, let's get into this. What should be the expectations for this Raptors squad going into this season?
It's really funny you say that, because I actually kind of think the range of outcomes is like very, very narrow in that I think 9th, 10th, or 11th in the Eastern Conference is kind of exactly where they're going to finish. Like maybe there's a world in which the Miami Heat, become old and decrepit or have a bunch of injuries, or Jimmy Butler gets traded for some reason and they fall out of the top 8. But I feel like the top 8 in the East is pretty entrenched, and the Raptors there's a couple of factors at play here, right? I think they're too good to be really bad. They're not going to be one of the Wizards or the Nets or the Pistons, these teams that seemingly have no shot of doing anything. But I also don't think they're super incentivized to try to go be excellent or anything like that. And what I expect we're going to see is they're going to roll with the team. Hopefully they're healthy to start the year in a way they just were not at any point last season. They had like 4 different iterations of the team between Pascal Siakam and Dennis Schroeder, then trades, and then injuries down the stretch with Scottie Barnes and Jakob Poeltl. It was just a nothing season. Go look at the data from last year's Raptor. Nothing matters. It's totally useless. But I do think that they're going to come into this year hopefully healthy and just kind of let it ride and see what happens, right? If they play pretty good ball and they're kind of floating around that play-in range, I don't think they're going to pull the chute necessarily at the trade deadline and trade everybody away and try to be really bad. But I do think they'll make like a couple of small off-sale moves. Bruce Brown is very much probably going to be traded by the deadline. Kelly Olynyk's a stealth candidate. If they really wanted to get crazy, I'm sure some team would pony up for Jakob Poeltl if he's having a good year. But I don't really see a full-scale, trade Poeltl, trade, important key guys who help this team get wins type of thing. I think they're mostly going to sort of play it out as a kind of middling team, see what kind of development they can get from their best players, and kind of have this be the year they learn about what they actually have on hand. That really is what this season's about, what the expectation is. Let's figure out exactly what this team is, what we need to add to it, and then we can go into the summer with maybe designs on going and making that jump next season.
So if the mission statement for last season's team was nothing mattered, and the mission statement for this year's team is let's figure out what this is, let's figure out what we have, something along those lines?
100%. Yeah. I just think, the last season they went in, they sort of dug themselves a hole of their own making with the Pascal Siakam thing and the OG Anunoby stuff that hung over the team for the first half of the season. They were a miserable watch. They didn't make any sense. Dennis Schroeder was their lead guard. It just was not a copacetic environment. I do think the sort of stretch of the season from last year that you can maybe pull some optimism from is February, where all the trades were behind them. They had mostly their full roster available. Some of those guys are gone now, but there are guys who have come in to replace them. And you know, you saw Scottie Barnes, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, Jakob Poeltl, Gradey Dick, guys who are going to matter for the future of this team, all playing together. And they, you know, had like a 5-5 record. They beat a couple of good teams. They hung close with a couple of good teams as well. That was really the only stretch of Raptors basketball that it was even like sort of halfway enjoyable last season. And my hope is they can kind of capture that and be, again, you know, probably a slightly below 500 team, but I don't think they're going to fall too far below the 11th seed in the Eastern Conference, just because below them is like 10,000 feet of dirt and muck and sludge, and then those 4 basketball teams.
Oh man, yeah. See, I was trying to resolve the fact that you could take a look at FanDuel Sportsbook. The Raptors have the 9th best odds in the East of making the playoffs, plus 470. But then you go look at their win total over under, and it's set at 30.5. So I'm just like, okay, well, what make this make sense to me, right? Are they going to make the playoffs with like 32 wins in the East, which I guess is a possibility?
They might. The East might stink at the bottom.
Okay. When you start to take a more holistic view at kind of, you know, the Raptors, I guess, kind of big 3 moving forward, Scottie Barnes, Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, which of those big 3 needs to take, I guess, the biggest step forward this season? What are you looking for out of one of those guys in particular?
I think this season is freaking enormous for RJ Barrett and his future with the Raptors. I think Emmanuel Quickly has already gotten the contract from the Raptors. Some people got mad at how much it was. Some people also don't understand that the salary cap is going up a whole lot. And he's basically paid right now average starting point guard money, which I think he's going to comfortably be. And I think he's going to be quite a bit better than that, honestly. I think this could be a really nice year for Emmanuel Quickly. And I think Scottie Barnes, we kind of know, okay, the team has given him the fun max for his next deal. He's going to be the franchise figure for this team. Yes, it'd be nice to see him expand upon the massive leap he had last year, but I think people feel pretty good about whatever is going to come from Scottie Barnes this year. RJ Barrett is a really big question mark because the RJ Barrett we saw post-trade last year was freaking phenomenal. He was incredible. Basically, every single time he hit the floor, he was putting up like 22, 7, and 4 on ridiculous efficiency. He scored like 72% at the rim. He was like a totally transformed player from this sort of clunky, where does he fit in? He's kind of inefficient, takes bad shots kind of player he was with the Knicks. He trimmed out all the fat and became this deadly offensive machine. The thing with him is defense. He was really bad for the Raptors last season on the defensive end. He was really bad for Team Canada in the Olympics this summer as well, despite him carrying over the really strong offensive performances. And I think if he wants to be on this team long-term, if the Raptors can sort of justify having him on this team long-term, it's because the defense comes around and becomes average to slightly above average. He's got to be a better point of attack guy. He's slow, kind of moving side to side. He gets pushed off his spot way too easily. He's not a super attentive team defender. And with the way this team is set up, Emmanuel Quickly, fine defender maybe at best. Gradey Dick, I think they kind of fancy as the long-term shooting guard of the future. I'm really high on Gradey Dick for this season, but he's not someone who's going to be a defensive ace for you. Scottie Barnes made a huge defensive leap last year, but it was mostly as like a low man rim protector help guy, and on-ball defense has never really been his bag. And then Jakob Poeltl is there kind of manning the back end. They don't have a shutdown wing defender. And if you're looking at the long-term vision of this team, a 3-and-D defensive wing type, I don't know, someone like OG Anunoby, for example, would be a really nice player to have on this team. And if RJ Barrett can't approximate that, with his contract being the closest of being up among the big 3 here, I think there's a chance that after this year, if things don't go well, they start to look at, can we try to move him in a deal where other stuff is attached to make an upgrade there? Is he someone we trade to try to get just like a haul back of young picks and players? Like, it all depends on the context of this year and how it all goes. But I do think RJ Barrett, it's not yet set in stone that he's going to be part of this team long term beyond this year next. And I think what we see from him this year particularly on the defensive end, is going to go a long way to determining whether he will be here playing for the hometown team that he loves to play for or playing somewhere else as the Raptors look for an upgrade.
I know we kind of glossed over it there for a moment. Scottie Barnes, kind of just the Raptors fans should and likely will feel comfortable with him moving forward. But when you're the face of a franchise, when you're the franchise cornerstone, there comes a lot of expectations with that role, right? So what is kind of the next step, the next evolution for Scottie in particular with his game to continue to kind of live up to that expectation of being the franchise cornerstone?
For me, I think it's like, can he win minutes when he's on the floor, right? He's always had good on-off differentials. Like the Raptors are better when he's on than off, but the Raptors were bad basically at all times last year, whether Scottie Barnes was, they were just much worse when he was off the floor. I do think that this year you got to start to see him be the type of guy who can carry Witt lineups to positive minutes just by being out there, right? This is the superstar thing. This is what the best players in the league do. You're on the floor, your team has a good shot of winning minutes. I think that's what we have to see. And as far as like the individual skills that go into that, I think there's just a lot of stuff, right? There's fine tuning of a bunch of different things. I think with Scottie Barnes, his short mid-range game was a real strength as a rookie. Last couple seasons, it's fallen off pretty dramatically from, the sort of 6 to 10 foot range where he can get to basically at will. No one can stop him from getting to that office. He just hasn't had a ton of success converting from there over the last couple of years. If he can tap into his rookie season where he was a 45% short mid-range shooter, I think that goes a long way. He's flashed some long mid-range stuff where he shot 43% on long mid-range shots last year. Pretty low volume. Can he amp up the volume, amp up the pull-up game that he has? I'm not thinking he's going to be some massive pull-up three-point shooting threat necessarily, but if you're going to be a superstar in the NBA, there's got to be at least a little pull-up to your game, whether it's from the mid-range or deep. And I think there's a chance that we see him kind of tap more into that this season, and that could have a whole lot of great effect. I also think the way he interacts with his teammates is big. Him and Emmanuel Quickley, in theory, the fit is beautiful. The skills really align and mesh, but they just could not find chemistry last year. Their timing is way off. There was like this sort of, when do I screen for you? And where do you like your screens? And then Scottie Barnes got hurt and missed the last 20 games, and they never really got to pick up that thread and finish off forging that bond. It seems like they spent a lot of time together this summer. I'm hopeful for what the Quickley Barnes duo can sort of produce this year. But really, it is that sort of holistic superstar stuff where you're making others better and your team as a result is better just by you being on the floor. It's a big thing. It's a big ask, but I do think he's got this sort of jack of all trades skill set to be able to do something approximating that going into this year. Maybe it's not fully answered, but if there's an improvement in that department, I think you'll take that as a success for Scottie Barnes this season.
There is a lot of young talent up and down this Raptors roster. Out of all these different guys, I mean, you could go to Jacoby Walter, recently drafted. You can go to Gradey Dick. You can pick any name up and down this roster. Who is in the best position you think to succeed or to take to have a breakout season for the Raptors this year?
I think it's Gradey Dick. I think he's going to start, and I think he's going to be really effective, and I think he's going to make the departure of Gary Trent Jr.
You don't think they toy with Davion Mitchell at all in the starting lineup, especially if they don't have a stop, like a defensive
Not
stopper?
if they want to score baskets.
That's fair. Yeah, the game is called basketball, Jackson.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
I really hope they don't start Mitchell. I think that's a really small backcourt to roll up there, first of all, with Quickley and Gradey Dick. And I just think this team is going to have to be one that thrives on offense for them to be successful. I don't think they have the defensive talent to be like an upper half of the league defense. I do think they have the offensive talent to be an upper half of the league offense. So lean into what makes you good.
You're good at.
100%. Do the Sacramento Kings thing from a couple of years ago, right? Where our offense is pretty rad and it kind of carries us places that our defense can't. And over time, maybe you find ways to improve the defense. That's a problem for future Raptors teams. I think Gradey Dick is going to start. I think he should start. And I think he's going to render the departure of Gary Trent Jr. as kind of a non-loss for the Raptors. I'm not, super keen on Gary Trent Jr. as like a guy who's going to go help the Bucks fix themselves or anything like that. I think he was a bit inflated in terms of his reputation in Toronto because he put up points and he had a really hot start to his Raptors career back during the Tampa Tampa season where he was like the only good thing going on for the Raptors at a time where it was a total disaster show. And beyond that, like he doesn't really, inform positive winning basketball when he's out there. I think his defensive reputation is a bit sort of inflated because he played in Nick Nurse defenses that asked him to just go be a maniac and hawk steals and kind of create events. When he's not doing that, he's not a very good point of attack defender. He's not a great team defender. And when he does gamble and misses, he's so out of position, he doesn't really matter to the play anymore. And so I think Gradey Dick has a chance of stepping in and being about as effective as Gary Trent Jr. was for the Raptors over the last couple seasons. I think he does more than Gary Trent Jr. when it comes to getting to the rim, making the next play in the sequence. Gary Trent Jr. loved to catch the ball, get run off the line, take a jab step mid-ranger and not keep the process flowing on offense. I think there's a chance that Gradey Dick just kind of gives a little bit more flow to this Raptors offense. He looked really good in Summer League. He looks like he's totally bulked up and sort of added to his frame after being totally physically overmatched as a rookie. And I think there's a chance that the Raptors starters with Gradey Dick are a really, really good lineup. The Raptors starters last year with Gary Trent Jr. along with Quickly, Barrett, Barnes, and Pirtle were a plus 12 as the second most used lineup per 100 possessions for the Raptors last season. Not a huge sample because there's no huge sample of any Raptors lineups last year, but I think they have a chance to be pretty successful and a clear positive lineup for the Raptors with the spacing and sort of just nice floor game that Gradey Dick brings to the table. So he's definitely the pick. He's going to be asked to do a lot this year, and I think he's going to have himself a very nice sophomore campaign.
Will the Raptors get a better sample of the Gradey Dick lineup featuring the other guys? Will Gradey Dick have a breakout season? And is it a make or break year for RJ Barrett? You're going to have us covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Raptors. Sean, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Anytime, brother.